Hi guys, Josh here, and I have to tell you about Everhaven, a very promising game that will most likely never get to play. In this video, I will explain why, I'll go over everything we know about the game, and what it could have been. Let's begin by quickly going over the game's development and history. Everhaven, the final title for what was referred to as Project Dragon internally, was a cozy survival crafting RPG that was being worked on for almost 4 years now by a team at Phoenix Labs, the same studio behind the farming sim Farm and the free-to-play RPG Dauntless. There would have been roughly between 75 to 125 developers working on this game. I do not have the exact numbers, but apparently it was of a much greater scope than Farm, both in terms of content and budget. When they were about 3 weeks away from revealing Everhaven to the world, the entire team got laid off and the game cancelled. Phoenix Labs issued a statement on May 16, 2024, stating, "We are reorganizing Phoenix Labs to focus on our best-in-class live service titles, Dauntless and Farm, and serving their communities." This unfortunately means cancelling work on all other projects at the studio, which will impact many of our colleagues immediately. This statement implies that additional projects were cancelled, not just Everhaven, and I am a little bit confused as to why they called Farm a live service title, but there could be a bit more behind this that is not fully disclosed. According to an article from GameDeveloper.com, in May 2023, Phoenix Labs broke off from their parent company Garena and were then seemingly acquired by a blockchain platform called Forte. For some reason, Phoenix Labs never publicly announced that last transaction with Forte. Not being familiar with Forte myself, I decided to look into them a little bit more, and they claim to be at the forefront of a new technological wave, blockchain gaming, and their mission is to prepare all game developers for it by helping them easily integrate blockchain technologies into their games, NFTs, and so on, so players can truly own their in-app purchases and virtual goods. This is a win for the entire ecosystem, and that's their words, not mine, just to clarify. I will let you come to your own conclusions as to why they would not publicize that acquisition, but one could assume that there could have been a difference in vision between the developers at Phoenix Labs, who had been working on Everhaven for years, and this new parent company whose entire work revolves around blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs. There are tons of great videos out there about blockchain in gaming if you're not familiar with that topic and why it's often not the best way to make a fun game, but no matter the details, in the end, Phoenix Lab cancelled various projects and laid off a ton of people. While in most instances where a game is cancelled before being even announced, we simply never get to see anything from it, the silver lining here is that the developers of Everhaven were able to negotiate something that would allow them to share some of their work with all of us. So I spent a lot of time on Twitter and other websites to gather as much information and images as possible from different artists who worked on Everhaven, and one person also accepted to discuss and share additional details about the game with me so that I could make this video as accurate as possible. For legal reasons, I will be keeping this source anonymous. When it comes to individual concept art and assets featured in this video, the name of the artist will be visible on the screen, and I will make sure to put links to their social media or portfolios in the video description if you wish to see more from anyone in particular. Also, keep in mind that this was a game in development, a work in progress, so some of the information I have may have changed at some point. Some assets could be placeholders or incomplete, animations missing. The final game would have been a lot more polished, but this should give you a general idea of what it would have looked like. Everhaven would have released in early access on Steam about 3 to 5 months following the trailer reveal, so if you're following with the timeline, in early June we would have had the trailer, and sometime between September and November of this year, we would have been playing the game. There were even talks of console versions for the future, but the priority was of course the early access on Steam and having the game evolve based on the players' feedback. Now let's talk about the actual game. Think of a survival game, something like Valheim, so you would have to keep an eye on your hunger and your health. And you're in this large, open, voxel-based world similar to what you would find in Minecraft. The world is procedurally generated for a different experience each time, but with some pre-made builds and chunks mixed into it to make things look harmonious and cohesive with the narrative of the world. The game would have most likely launched with the Innerlands, a central biome with lots of grass, hills, and forests, and then additional biomes like the Highlands, featuring mountains reaching up to the clouds, or the Badlands, filled with colorful canyons, among many other biomes would have been added later throughout early access, gradually expanding the world. Starting the game, you would quickly meet with the Great Spirit, who would task you with finding 5 heroes, each one teaching you one of the core mechanics of the game.
Welcome, little seed. This is the Inner Lands.
Similarly to Breath of the Wild, players would then be given a lot of freedom and could decide which hero to find first or how to approach certain quests. One of these heroes was Oka, this ocarina golem with accordions as arms.
Hello, I'm so glad to meet you. That's a marvelous lute. I'm sure the spirits will love it.
Oka would be the one teaching you musical crafting. Equipped with an instrument, you would play music to these little spirits found around the world, and they would drop resources then used to craft musical devices. A bit like what you can do in Minecraft with node blocks and redstone, you would have blocks with different sounds and properties that you would physically place to create structures producing music. The second hero was called Graf, and this one is a Weaver, which is the dragon people race of this world. As you can maybe guess by looking at his anvil-shaped head, this one would teach you about smithing and help you unlock various crafting tables in order to make weapons such as swords or staves that are tied to different spells. While Everhaven was meant to be a cozy, relaxing game first and foremost, it did include some combat. You could dodge roll, some enemies would have unique or interesting patterns, but overall it was kept fairly straightforward to make the game approachable. Another hero was Effie, most often found traveling with Pacer, her dragon companion, and Effie's wheelchair would ingeniously become the saddle.
Hey there! I can recognize a newcomer when I see one. If you're gonna find your own place in the Innerlands, the speed of a plains wyvern can't be beat.
Effie would teach you about mounts, a crucial part of any good open-world game. You would have the choice between a variety of unique fantasy creatures to ride with, and keep in mind a lot of what is shown on the screen is concept art, so it doesn't mean that they would have all made it into the game, but from what we can see, I love the designs. There's this deer made out of wood and leaves, this literal phoenix lab, this strange mix between a bee and a pig, as well as these racing kitwings, these giant cats with artificial wings that make them look like rays. Honestly, if there was a fantasy racing game with these creatures, I would without a doubt be playing it. By the way, the whole world would be interactable and customizable in Everhaven, so just like in Minecraft, you can see here a bit of the building mechanics. The player is placing some blocks, so if you wanted, for example, to create a racing course for you and your friends to compete in with your kitwings, that is more than likely something you could do in Everhaven. So mounts are one thing, but we also have pets who are introduced to you by Zent, this quirky recluse and friend of the critters. In order to tame a pet, you would first have to figure out their favorite treat, make it, and then give it to the critter. Once again, lots of very interesting designs here. Feel free to pause the video to look at them or check the links in the description. There is so much to see. You can easily fall into the rabbit hole of looking at this game's art for hours and hours. From what I've gathered, the pets were still a bit early in development, so you could tame them, they would have animations, play with things in the environment. They would have been a bit simple for the beginning of early access, but more features would have been added later on, like the ability for them to grow, to help with certain tasks, and so on. Our last hero was Lea Dona, the leader of the Kitkin troop, and she would use her theatrical expertise to teach you about emotes. Because yes, Everhaven was planned to be a multiplayer experience where you could join your friends and explore, build, fight together, and all of that is always more fun with emotes. It was not meant to necessarily be like an MMO or large servers with tons and tons of people, but something you could play with a group of friends. From what I've been told, developers were playtesting with groups of under 10 people, which to me sounds like a nice number. I find that a lot of cozy games restrict you to 4 players, even in multiplayer-focused games like Palia, where you have servers of 25 people, but you can only have 4 in your party, which makes it tricky to stay with all of your friends. So I feel like they were definitely onto something interesting here with the option of having maybe 5 to 10 players together. So these were the 5 main pillars of the game: music, combat, pets, mounts, and emotes. But you would also have side activities like fishing, gardening, of course building, with possibly more being added down the line with new heroes introducing new mechanics as the world expanded. For early access, however, we would have had these 5 main heroes, and while the mechanics and the gameplay as a whole were designed to be pretty sandboxy, where you could do whatever you want at your own pace, go anywhere, one player could spend most of their time just making music, another could try to collect all of the different critters. In the end, everything would be tied together by a narrative. If you couldn't tell already by all of the unique creature designs, the team behind Everhaven put a huge emphasis on the lore of the game and making it an immersive world to be in. So each hero had their own storyline brought to life by fully voiced cinematics, and here's a sneak peek at Oka's introduction.
Long before the bramble knit together our land, golems like Oka were built to serve in these shrines.
Everhaven would have been fully voiced, by the way, not only the narration, not only during these cinematics, not only the main 5 heroes, but all of the other characters as well. The developers were planning for the game to feature between 30 to 60 villagers that you could interact with and befriend. These villagers would reward you with items and things, but most importantly, once you were close enough to them, you would be able to place them in your own builds and have them help you out with different tasks. Each villager would come with their distinct abilities and perks, and you could, for example, create a little house for them, a little village, and have them water your crops, gather some materials, and they would place whatever they collected in a box for you to pick up. Sometimes there's a lot to do in these crafting open world games, and it can feel overwhelming trying to keep up with everything by yourself, so I love the idea of having a bit of automation, a bit of help even if you're playing by yourself, and I think that would also make the world feel a lot more lively. So we talked about the heroes and other NPCs of Everhaven, but what about you, their protagonist? Well, you would create your own character and pick between a variety of races, of course humans, but also some fantasy races with animal features like cat people, dragon people, or shark people. But my favorite of all is the Vilkin, which are these floral people with leaves, flowers, or mushrooms as hair. We have video footage here of the character creation screen. Once again, keep in mind it is in development, well, it was in development, but you can see we had 5 races to pick from, possibly more in the full game. Tons of options to change things like the head shape, the hair, horns. Of course, these things would vary depending on the race, a wide selection of body types, skin colors, patterns, and the outfits. Look at all of these clothes, they're all so detailed and creative, they just look great. You could also pick your mount and change its color, and I'm not sure if that means you would start the game with a mount or just unlock it later after meeting Effie, but that gives you a good idea of what the characters and the mounts look like together. One interesting thing to note is that while the game offered to choose between multiple races, it was not like in most RPGs where each one came with different perks or stats. They were all functionally the same, the differences were purely cosmetics, and this is because the game was not designed in a way where you leveled up or built your character with skill trees and such, but rather the focus was on the crafting. So you would be encouraged to gather new resources in order to make better equipment, better tools, as well as cook some meals and brew some potions to give you temporary buffs and so on. We can see some of the tools concept art here, and there were some ideas of not only having tools going from like wood to bronze to iron like in all of the games, but tools that actually behave differently or give you certain perks. For example, a sickle to use during daytime to increase your loot, one to use at night for special night crops, one that prevents birds from stealing your crops, and more. So the game was all about what you crafted and cooked more than upgrading your character itself and leveling up. Overall, it seemed like such an ambitious and promising project that I know for sure so many players around the world, including myself, would have enjoyed. I think I covered the most important of what I was able to learn about this game in the last weeks. Developers are still releasing new details and images every single day, so I have no doubt there will be even more coming out after my video. And actually, there is one very interesting thing that did come out as I am working on this. A petition started to bring back Everhaven. It's currently sitting at 4,000 signatures, but it's going up every hour. At the moment, the IP and everything about the game still belongs to Phoenix Labs, and this petition aims to let Phoenix Labs and their parent company Forte know just how much the gaming community wants to see this game being completed, and how it could have been so incredibly successful. This petition could either encourage Phoenix Labs to relaunch the development, to maybe sell the rights to another company who does want to work on it, or anything else that could make things move. Whether or not the petition ends up working, it doesn't cost anything to sign, so I will leave the link for that in the description. It is truly heartbreaking to see a game with so much potential being cancelled, especially so close to launch when the development was going well. I would love to play Everhaven someday, but if I don't, at least now we have this video where we can dream about it, imagine what it could have been, and appreciate the beautiful work that these developers created during the past 4 years. I also hope that all of the developers are able to find work again soon, and hopefully on a project that is as exciting as this one. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think. Would you have played Everhaven? Were you maybe one of the people that worked on this game? Consider signing the petition, leave a like on this video so it can reach more people, share it with your friends who like cozy crafting games, and I'll see you all in the next video.